Have you ever felt like life keeps testing you? As if, no matter what you do, you keep attracting the same kind of situations, conflicts, energy-draining people, or just endless emotional turbulence. You might be thinking, why does this keep happening? Why me? We've all had that feeling. It's like an invisible force is pushing us into these patterns, time and time again. You walk through the same spaces, see the same faces, and still, there's this recurring cycle of chaos. But what if I told you that there's a reason behind this? And it's not just random chance, fate, or misfortune. Imagine you could step out of this endless loop. What if you could stop attracting negativity and toxicity into your life? What if you could learn to stop feeling drained, manipulated, and stuck in the same emotional battles? Sounds impossible, right? Well, it's not. Today we're diving deep into a psychological concept that could change everything for you. And I'm not talking about surface-level advice like learn to set boundaries or just avoid negative people. Those might help to a certain extent, but they won't stop the deeper cause of the problem. The real power lies in understanding something that most people never consider: your inner world. Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, discovered something that, at first glance, seems almost too simple to be true. But if you've ever felt like your life was dominated by toxic people, overwhelming emotional cycles, or feelings of insecurity and self-doubt, what I'm about to say could turn your world upside down. The truth is, it's not about avoiding toxic people. It's not about blocking them, ignoring them, or fighting them. In fact, trying to resist them or get them out of your life only fuels the cycle. The key to breaking free isn't in external change. It's in changing how you perceive yourself and how you deal with your inner shadows. Let's start by talking about something we all have but rarely understand: the shadow. Jung coined the term shadow to describe the parts of ourselves we repress, ignore, or deny. The things we don't want to acknowledge because they feel uncomfortable or shameful. And ironically, these hidden aspects of our psyche are exactly what attracts the toxic people, the emotional manipulators, the predators who feed off your energy. But here's the twist. Toxic people don't come into our lives randomly. They don't just happen to target us. They are like emotional predators. And just like predators in the wild, they sniff out the weaknesses in others. But they don't prey on someone who's strong, confident, and whole. They go after those who are wounded. And here's the real kicker. The wounds that toxic people exploit aren't necessarily physical. They're emotional. And sometimes we don't even know they're there. We've buried them so deep inside that we forget they exist. But make no mistake, those wounds are alive and well. They attract the predators because predators have a way of sensing where you're vulnerable. Now, you might be asking, how can I stop this from happening? How can I stop being a target for these emotional predators? The answer is simpler than you might think, but it requires you to do something most people never even consider. You have to integrate your shadow. Integrating your shadow means facing those parts of yourself that you hide from the world and from yourself. The anger, the fear, the shame, the guilt. Those things you try to push away because they don't fit with the image you want to present to the world. Here's the truth though. You can't heal what you don't acknowledge. When you face your shadow, when you understand it and accept it, it loses its power over you. It no longer controls your behavior, your thoughts, or your emotions. And more importantly, it no longer attracts the people who feed off your pain. But here's the challenge. Most people don't want to look at their shadow. It's uncomfortable, it's messy, and it's often full of things we'd rather not face. So, what do? We push it down, we ignore it, we pretend it's not there, But the truth is, it's always there. And it's silently running the show behind the scenes, making you react in ways that keep you stuck in toxic cycles. And here's the key: you are not the problem. Toxic people will always be there. They're part of the human experience. But you don't have to keep being their prey. You don't have to keep being their emotional punching bag. What you need is a shift in how you relate to yourself. The problem is not that they're toxic. The problem is that they can see your cracks, your weaknesses, and they know how to exploit them. Imagine for a moment if you could turn that around. What if you could become someone that they simply couldn't see? What if you could live a life where emotional predators just lost interest in you because they could no longer detect any emotional weaknesses? That's the power of integrating your shadow. When you do this, you build what Jung called psychic integrity, a state of wholeness that's so strong, so grounded, that toxic people simply can't feed off you anymore. It's like you've built an emotional shield, but it's not something you wear externally. It's something you carry within yourself. So, how do we begin this process of integration? How do we start turning this inner work into a real, tangible change? Let's take a closer look at what it means to start working with your shadow. First, we need to understand that projections are one of the key ways our shadow operates. You might be thinking, what do you mean by projections? Well, projections are when we take parts of ourselves that we don't want to accept, our flaws, our weaknesses, the things we hate about ourselves, and we project them onto others. For example, if you find yourself getting angry or resentful towards someone because of their selfishness or arrogance, ask yourself, is this really just about them? Or is there something inside of me that feels like it's not allowed to express those same feelings? When you project, you're essentially throwing your unresolved issues onto someone else. But here's the thing. Projections only work because they reflect something inside of you. So, when someone triggers you, instead of blaming them for what they're doing, take a step back and ask yourself, what part of me am I refusing to acknowledge? This is not about self-blame. It's about understanding that when we react intensely to others, it's often because we're seeing something we don't like in ourselves. When you recognize that, you can stop the cycle. You no longer need to feed into the drama. You see, drama is not something that just happens to you. Drama is something you participate in. It's something you feed, and by feeding it, you keep it alive. So, how do you stop feeding the drama? Neutrality is the antidote. Now, neutrality doesn't mean passivity. It doesn't mean you just sit there and let people walk all over you. It's not about being a doormat or ignoring the situation. What it means is this: when you stop reacting emotionally, you take away the power toxic people have over you. Toxic people thrive on emotional reactions. They live for those moments when they can push your buttons and watch you react. But when you don't give them that satisfaction, they lose interest. This doesn't happen overnight. It's a skill that takes time to develop. But when you can learn to respond with calm, with neutrality, you rob toxic people of their power to manipulate you. And in that space, you become free. So here's the challenge. Don't feed the drama. The moment you feel that emotional pull to react, whether it's anger, frustration, or fear, take a step back, breathe, and remind yourself that you don't have to play the game anymore. But there's more. Next, we need to talk about internal boundaries. External boundaries are important, but internal boundaries are the real game changer. Internal boundaries are the invisible lines you draw within yourself that define what you will and won't tolerate emotionally. When you have strong internal boundaries, no one can manipulate you. No one can play with your emotions. You don't have to prove yourself to anyone. You don't need validation. You simply know who you are, what you stand for, and what you won't tolerate. And when you embody that, the world starts to treat you differently. Internal boundaries aren't just about saying no to others. They're about saying yes to yourself. They're about aligning with your own values, desires, and truths, and not letting anyone push you off your path. When you build this kind of internal strength, you stop being the victim of anyone's emotional games. The key is to first recognize that the patterns you keep attracting in your life are not just random. They are a reflection of your inner world. When you transform your inner world, everything around you will start to change. Now, let's dig a little deeper. One of the most profound lessons you can learn is how to stop relying on external validation. For most of us, we're conditioned from a young age to seek approval, to measure our worth based on how others see us. But when you live for validation, you are constantly at the mercy of others. You're allowing them to control your sense of self-worth. But when you start to trust yourself, when you stop seeking constant reassurance, you create an emotional fortress that is impenetrable. Toxic people can't touch you anymore because your sense of self is no longer dependent on them. It's no longer about what they think of you, how they react to you, or whether they accept you. When you stop playing for their approval, you can start to live for your own. You are the only one who needs to validate your existence. And when you do that, you radiate a quiet, powerful confidence that repels anything toxic. Now that's the type of transformation that makes you truly untouchable. So far, we've explored how toxic people are like emotional predators, preying on our vulnerabilities, and how the key to breaking free lies not in fighting against them or avoiding them, but in transforming how we relate to ourselves by integrating our shadows. The process of inner healing, of facing the darkest parts of ourselves, gives us the strength to stop attracting negativity and toxic energy into our lives. But the journey doesn't end there. It's not just about evading toxicity. It's about becoming someone who is no longer affected by it. In fact, psychic integrity isn't just about keeping toxic people away from you. It's about a transformation that goes deeper than anything external. It's about fundamentally changing the way you perceive the world, others, and most importantly, yourself. When you cultivate psychic integrity, you build an internal resilience that makes you nearly untouchable. It's like creating an emotional fortress from within, one that toxic people, manipulators, and emotional vampires simply can't penetrate. But here's the paradox. While toxic people try to invade your emotional space, they can only do so if you still have open wounds. It's when you carry unhealed emotional pain you're not aware of, that you unknowingly signal to these emotional predators that you're a target. And that's why the journey to psychic integrity isn't just about cutting toxic people out of your life. It's about becoming someone who no longer invites toxicity into their energy field. Let's talk more about what it looks like when you integrate your shadow completely and step into your full power. Step 1. Emotional detachment. As you begin to integrate your shadow and heal, you'll notice a profound shift in how you interact with others. For example, when someone criticizes you or tries to manipulate you, instead of reacting with anger, frustration, or self-doubt, you'll feel a sense of emotional detachment. This detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop letting other people's actions control your emotions. Emotional detachment is incredibly liberating. It gives you the freedom to respond to situations thoughtfully and intentionally, instead of automatically reacting based on past pain or insecurities. It allows you to choose how you respond to others without being hijacked by their negative energy. This emotional detachment also makes you less susceptible to being manipulated. Toxic people thrive on provoking reactions. If they can get a rise out of you, Whether it's through guilt tripping, angering you, or making you feel ashamed, they can continue to control you. But when you stop reacting, you take away their power. You stop feeding into their drama. But it's important to recognize that emotional detachment doesn't mean shutting yourself off emotionally or becoming cold and distant. Instead, it's about choosing your emotional responses consciously. When you detach, you create space between stimulus and reaction, giving yourself the opportunity to pause and decide how you want to engage with the situation. This pause is where your power lies. Step 2. Creating boundaries from within. Boundaries aren't just about keeping toxic people at bay. They start within you. They begin with understanding who you are, what you value, and what you're willing to tolerate. It's not just about saying no to others. It's about saying yes to yourself. Internal boundaries are the foundation of emotional health. They allow you to define what's acceptable and what isn't in your emotional world. They help you create a clear distinction between your emotions and the emotions of others. When someone tries to manipulate you, gaslight you, or push you into a reaction, your internal boundaries serve as a filter. You can feel their energy and their intentions, but they can't penetrate your peace. When you have strong internal boundaries, you know exactly where you end and others begin. You don't take on the emotional baggage of other people, nor do you allow others to dictate how you feel. For example, if someone criticizes you, instead of taking it personally or becoming defensive, you can step back and assess whether the criticism is valid or simply an attempt to push your buttons. You can feel the emotions that arise, but you don't let them define you. Here's the truth. You can't set strong external boundaries until you first set boundaries within yourself. If you don't know what you will and won't tolerate internally, how can you expect to enforce those boundaries in your relationships with others? Internal boundaries are the invisible framework that holds everything together. When you know yourself, your values, your emotions, your needs, you become less susceptible to manipulation and more aligned with your truth. Step 3. Healing your inner wounds. This part of the journey is perhaps the most challenging, but also the most rewarding. It's easy to blame toxic people for the emotional pain we experience, but the truth is that emotional wounds don't heal by ignoring them. They heal by acknowledging them, by giving them space to be felt, and by learning from them. When you integrate your shadow, you're not just healing the wounds that others have caused you, you're healing the wounds you've caused yourself. This means facing the parts of yourself that feel inadequate, unworthy, or broken. It means confronting the shame, guilt, or fear you've buried deep inside. And it means letting go of the need to be perfect. Most of us carry wounds from childhood, messages we received about who we are, what we're worth, or what we can achieve. These wounds shape how we see ourselves and the world around us. For example, if you grew up feeling like you weren't good enough, you might attract relationships where you feel constantly criticized or undervalued. Or if you felt abandoned, you might attract people who are emotionally unavailable or distant. But when you begin to heal these wounds, when you stop projecting your insecurities onto others, you create a new kind of freedom. You stop attracting people who mirror your wounds. Instead, you begin to attract those who see your strength, your potential, and your worth. Healing your inner wounds also means letting go of the need for validation. As long as you seek validation from external sources, whether it's through praise, approval, or admiration, you're giving away your power. You're handing the reins of your life to others. But when you validate yourself internally, when you stop needing anyone's approval to feel worthy, you stop attracting people who feed off your neediness or insecurity. Step 4. Embracing your full potential. Integration isn't just about healing the parts of yourself you've hidden or rejected. It's about embracing the full spectrum of who you are. It's about recognizing that your darkness doesn't make you weak. It makes you whole. When you integrate your shadow, you recognize that you are a complex being with light and dark, strength and vulnerability, confidence and fear. Embracing your full potential means accepting that you are not perfect. You are beautifully human, and that's enough. In fact, when you embrace your flaws, your imperfections, and your vulnerabilities, you stop seeking perfection in others. You stop expecting others to complete you, and you start becoming whole in yourself. This journey of self-discovery isn't always easy. It's not a quick fix, but when you make the decision to face your shadow, to heal your wounds, to set strong internal boundaries, and to embrace your full potential, you become an entirely different person. You become the person you were always meant to be, strong, resilient, and untouchable by the forces that once held you back. The final step in this process is recognizing that you are no longer at the mercy of toxic people. You stop attracting them because they no longer have a hold on you. Your internal world is no longer a reflection of your wounds, your fears, or your insecurities. It's a reflection of your strength, your clarity, and your integrity. And that's the magic of integrating your shadow. When you do this inner work, the world around you begins to shift. You stop attracting toxic people. You stop getting caught in the same emotional cycles. You stop feeling drained and manipulated. Instead, you start living from a place of inner peace, from a place of power. Step 5. Living authentically. The final piece of the puzzle is about living authentically. When you integrate your shadow, you no longer hide behind masks or pretenses. You stop pretending to be someone you're not in order to please others. Instead, you start living in alignment with your true self, expressing who you really are without fear of judgment or rejection. Living authentically means making decisions based on your own values, not the expectations of others. It means showing up in the world as your true self, unapologetically. And when you do this, you create a magnetic energy that attracts the right people into your life. People who are aligned with your values, your mission, and your purpose. As you continue on this path, remember, you are the creator of your own reality. The moment you integrate your shadow, stop feeding the drama, and set strong internal boundaries, you step into your power. You stop attracting toxic relationships, and you start living the life you were always meant to live. This is the true freedom. Freedom from emotional predators, from toxicity, from the need for validation, and from the fear of your own darkness. True freedom comes when you stop running from yourself and start embracing who you really are. So, what are you waiting for? The power to change your life is already inside of you. Take that first step today. Integrate your shadow, set your boundaries, heal your wounds, and live authentically. The rest will follow.